Hello everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking a little bit more about League of Legends. I'm the Strategy Professor, and for this episode, we're going to be talking about metagames. So what is a metagame? How do you analyze a metagame? What is the current metagame? And what kinds of good decisions can you make based on your knowledge of metagames? So let's go ahead and get on in here. So what is meta? This is a word that gets thrown around a lot that I think many people just have no idea what it means or what the concept is supposed to mean, because people will say, oh, that's so meta, or, we'll talk about metagames in, things like League of Legends, World of Warcraft, StarCraft, and then you have people throwing around stuff like metadata analysis and things like that in computer science and analytics and things like that. So what is meta? So the concept meta derives from the Greek prefix, which means beyond. So a meta game means the strategy beyond individual components in a game that influence the power of those components. So you want to think of it as the strategy. So how are people operating within certain systems, strategic systems? So that's what a meta game is it's trying to figure out, the optimal strategies for operating within a system. So if this was, American football, metagame would be how different coaches run their offenses or defenses and things like that. So based on the rules, based on the kinds of players that you have, things like that, then you make choices. In League of Legends, I have an example here. So think about it this way, the difference between metagame and not metagame. So Jax, if he has 6 items and trades melee attacks with any other champion in the game, just about, he's probably going to win. It depends on a bunch of different factors. But yet, despite this power, Jax is not played that often because the metagame doesn't favor him right now. Now, he is played and he can be very powerful. I'm just using it as an example of someone who could be powerful, but just in the abstract, in terms of his kit, in terms of the items and all that. But he's not played for a variety of reasons. So that's just what you want to think about in terms of the metagame itself, is just why are certain champions strong on certain patches. So not in the abstract, but in the collection of different things that are going on within strategic systems. So what does all that mean? I've got it broken down here for you. I've got 6 different things that influence the metagame, and they should hopefully help you understand how to think about, well, why are some champions powerful? It's not just random. It's not that people have suddenly discovered things a lot of times that people have never thought about before in League of Legends. It's probably because items have changed, champions have changed, different aspects of the game have changed, and that has made these champions more viable in certain respects. So let's go ahead and look at some specific examples here. All right, so the number one thing that influences metagames the most are items. So champions are great. They have great abilities, they have great powers, but a lot of times what determines which champions are really strong on certain patches are the items, which items they can get and how well they work with the really strong items. So certain items are just significantly more powerful than others. That's just all there is to it. For example, hardly anybody builds Randuin's anymore, hardly anyone builds Wit's End anymore. Very few people build Rageblade. But almost every AD carry builds Infinity Edge and Hurricane, with a few examples like Ezreal and such. But there's a reason for this. It's not random. It's because certain items are just stronger than others. I know this seems obvious, but it's not just like somebody's opinion on which items are strong, right? It's mathematical, and it's in terms of the meta itself. So, for example, Trinity Force, if that is a good item, Irelia is probably going to be a good champion. So if Trinity Force is good, then Irelia, Ezreal, and Hecarim become a lot more powerful because they're very good with Trinity Force, because they have spammable abilities that can proc the passive. They benefit a lot from all of the stats, from the move speed, the extra attack damage, extra attack speed, all of that. They benefit from it all. So that's why if you see metas where Trinity Force is really powerful, and that item has changed a lot over the years, but if it's actually good, then there's a good chance that Irelia, Ezreal, and Hecarim will be very good as well. Another example, so if Hurricane is a very good popular item, I'm pretty sure a couple of years ago when it came out, it was garbage. It was really bad, but then they gave it some buffs, and if it's good, it's going to benefit champions, ranged champions, whose interactions become more powerful with on-hit ability. So Caitlyn, for example, if you hit a bunch of people, you get more headshots in. Twitch, you hit a bunch of people, you apply the poison to them. So whereas someone like Tristana doesn't get any real inherent extra benefit from the on-hit. Yeah, she gets extra damage on him, but she doesn't get any extra stacks of anything special on people. So that's why if Hurricane becomes a lot more popular, then champions who can use it, like Twitch and Caitlyn, also become a lot more popular and powerful. So that's why Caitlyn rose to prominence in the spring of last year, is because, well, there's a bunch of reasons, but one of which was because they buffed Hurricane significantly. Now, they also nerfed different things. They nerfed Sivir, and they nerfed aspects of Jhin, and they nerfed a couple of other things as well that helped Caitlyn rise to prominence. But a big part of that equation was Hurricane becoming a much more viable and better item. Conversely, if an item gets nerfed, it can dramatically diminish the viability of certain champions. So, for example, the nerf in Season 7 of Armor Penetration really took away a lot of the power of early game champions like Lucian and MF. Now they have Lethality, which is garbage until much later in the game, but you're picking someone like Lucian and Misfortune for early game pressure. So they're going to lose out to other champions that build crit and crit scaling rather than penetration, because crit's just going to scale much better into the game than penetration. So by the time you actually get the penetration from Lethality, then it's not going to be as useful as the other build crit. And so that's basically has almost completely run Lucian and MF out of the metagame if people are playing serious and want to win a lot of ranked games. Okay, so items, big determinant on which champions are really powerful. Masteries. This is another one. Whenever there's a particularly powerful mastery, then certain champions that can really abuse that mastery are going to become better. So Janna was very powerful in Season 6 because of the Windspeaker mastery. That extra 10% shields. I mean, they nerfed it a couple of times. It used to give even more armor and magic resist. But because Windspeakers is a good mastery, that makes Janna a much better champion because she can really use that quite well. And the same is true of things like Sona and Soraka. This is why Soraka became very powerful as well, where they had to nerf her a few different times last season. Vi, as a contemporary example, became a lot more powerful in Season 7 because Courage of the Colossus helps her survive a lot better when she engages. So she can actually build damage now and still be very tanky with her own shield stacked with Courage of the Colossus. And that's a common problem that we'll talk about earlier. A common phenomenon is that champions can build damage and still be tanky and have a lot of survivability with Courage of the Colossus, which is a very dangerous balancing pattern. But different synergies, so different ways that champions work with each other can also determine which champions are in the meta, which champions are very popular. So unique interactions between specific champions can magnify the power of each champion. So for example, if we look at Janna, she significantly amplifies the power of Twitch and Vayne because she excels at peeling threats, so she keeps them very safe. Those are both very dangerous. Twitch, because he doesn't really have an escape. He can go invisible again now, which makes him a lot better, but still, he's relatively squishy and easy to get to. And Vayne, because she's very short range for an AD carry. So they need a lot of peel. That's what Janna offers. But then she also gives them extra attack damage, and that scales very well with critical strikes. So when you have that 40 AD and you tumble, roll, and crit somebody with your static shiv and Q damage or whatever, that 40 AD all of a sudden gets amplified up to do much, much more than just 40 damage. And because she gets a lot of extra attack speed and things like that, it helps her out too. Her Q is a percentage of her total AD as well, so it helps with that. So any champion that needs peel and benefits a lot from extra AD, I mean 40 extra AD is a lot. That's like 1,250 gold worth of extra AD without taking up an item slot. It's a free BF sword. Then Vayne's going to be very powerful in that kind of meta. Janna. Now, Janna also got her shield nerfed. It used to give 50 AD, and they nerfed her Tornado, they've nerfed her W, they've nerfed all kinds of things. I think she might be the most nerfed champion of all time, literally. I think I saw a video of it. I think she might be the most nerfed champion of all time, and she still is the best support in solo queue, or right up there, one of the top 3. So she has a ton of power. Okay, other things that can determine which champions are strong in a given meta are counters to enemy champions. So not only the way that your champion works with your allies, but also the way that certain champions counter enemy champions. So some champions just become more powerful because they're very good against other champions. So for example, Tahm Kench is very good against Thresh because if Thresh is ever really good, and he hooks somebody, then Tahm Kench can just W and eat him. Tahm Kench was also very good against Ashe in early 2016 when Ashe was super powerful. They reworked her Q where it did all this extra damage because he can totally nullify her arrow. So that's when Tahm Kench was the one of a rising, really powerful suite of supports because he countered Ashe very well, and they ended up nerfing Ashe and they nerfed Tahm Kench, which was probably unwarranted because, you know, they nerfed the champion that was making Tahm Kench good, which was Ashe. Anyways, so when Ashe is good, Tahm Kench is going to be good. When Thresh is really good, Tahm Kench is going to be good. So some champions become a lot more powerful in certain metas because of which champions are powerful on the enemy team. Okay, game flow. Now this one's a little bit more challenging to understand, but the way that games unfold can determine which champions are better too. So are games ending quickly? Are we in a meta where games are ending in 25 to 30 minutes? Are we in a meta where games are taking longer than 40 minutes? Some champions are just much better in different types of games. Are we in a game where Baron is super strong and we need to be able to take Baron quickly? Our tower is really easy to kill? Are people playing, you know, very squishy champions and everyone's just running around dying a whole lot? Is it someone who benefits from a whole lot of extra gold from kills and assists? So thinking about that can influence which champions are good. So for example, the introduction of first tower gold means that champions that are very good early on and can take towers gained a lot of extra prominence because that extra 400 gold is really important early on in the game if you get that first tower gold. So this change in power champions that can also dive very well in early ganks. So things like Lee Sin, Zac, and Nautilus gained a lot of extra power because they can dive really well, kill people, get away, and do significant damage to towers after they're gone. So the game flow determines it. So right now we live in a game where it's pretty fast-paced early on. People want that first tower gold, and they want to close out games quickly. It's not a long meta. Games are... I haven't looked at the stats, but I would imagine games are probably 3 to 5 minutes shorter on average than they were last season. So people are definitely trying to close out games a lot faster. And psychology. So this does play a role in it. I know some people think that meta is strictly all psychological, right? Like every champion can be just as good as any other champion if you play well with it. It's just a psychology. It's just people being meta slaves, meta sheep. It's like, well, there is some psychology to it. There is some group think, but there's also all of these other things that I just talked about that you can actually measure. And you could write out a bunch of equations and figure it out if you want to. I don't write out equations, but I do analyze these things in quite good depth in my tier list videos. If you ever check those out, I'm going to release a new tier list when 7.1 comes out, so stay tuned for that early next week. But a lot of this stuff is objective. It's not subjective. Like there are certain flavors and different things, but certain concepts and ideas are just more objectively powerful. You know, like I just said, depending on which items, mastery, synergy with champions, counters, and the game flow, that all actually is a thing that matters. It's not just psychological. But psychology does play a role in it. So how does psychology play a role? People will probably know this. If people think champions are stronger, you will see them a lot, and sometimes they will actually become stronger because people will start playing them more and start mastering them more because they will think that they're stronger. So psychology does affect how strong champions can be. Or how strong people perceive champions to be, so they'll play them a lot. So players will watch streamers and pros comment on the power level of a champion, and they will believe this commentary a lot of times, regardless of other game systems. So they won't think, well, pros are playing a different kind of game, or this pro's just really frustrated, or maybe this pro just doesn't know game theory that well. Like maybe they're just an excellent player, but they don't actually sit down and analyze stuff that closely. That's totally possible. Most pro players are actually pretty smart at the game, but you know, there could be some, especially streamers that aren't pros, that don't necessarily always know what they're talking about. I mean, I've been wrong about stuff too. I'm not saying I'm always right. I'm just saying this is a thing that people give streamers and pros too much credit sometimes when they're thinking of the psychology. So a simple example is Rengar. People will think that Rengar is overpowered and he's meta and he's just super abusive and mega powerful because high-level streamers excel with him, right? Because you see people like Night Blue 3 and stuff like that running around killing everybody with Rengar. But statistically, Rengar, as of 6.24, while I'm making this video, only has a 46% win rate. And you'll see that with other champions too. They'll be like, oh, Yasuo's busted, or Lee Sin's busted, and all this stuff. And these champions won't have much more than a 50% win rate. And a lot of times they'll have lower than a 50% win rate in terms of the general population. So, and it can be frustration too. Like maybe a champion is just super frustrating to play against. Even if the champion is not necessarily statistically super overpowered, it can be frustrating to play against. So if it's a Darius top lane and you like playing melee top laners and you just die a lot to Darius, you might think that he's overpowered, right? Because you are playing things that he's really good against. So it can be psychological in that sense. Or if a champion keeps ganking you over and over again, like Lee Sin, you're like, man, Lee Sin's so overpowered right now. That can play into it as well. So an example I'm going to talk about near the end of this video is the common complaint right now that AD carries are terrible. So you'll hear like Double Lift say AD carries are terrible. You'll hear I'm a Cutie Pie say AD carries are terrible. Philol, AD carries are terrible. Red Mercy, AD carries are terrible. Everybody says AD carries are terrible. Let me show you something real quick. Let's take a little tour here. I'll show you just how terrible AD carries are right now. All right, we're gonna go North America. Now you can look in other regions too. I'm just gonna look in North America because that's where I am currently. Let's look at Double Lift. Let's see how terrible these AD carries are. Okay, so he complains a lot about how garbage AD carries are. He's 66% with Caitlyn, 54% with Jhin, 65% with Vayne, 77% with Varus, 70% with Twitch, 67% with Ashe. Doesn't seem that bad to me. Let's look at Sneaky. 55, 59, 64, 70, 67. So he still wins a lot with 80 carries. So they're not that bad. Now, yes, other positions are powerful. Right now, the last time I looked at this, and I'm not 100, is this guy 80 carry or top? I can't remember. Okay, this is a support. Okay, so the ratings changed a little bit since I've last looked. But the last time I looked, at least 3 of the top 10 players were 80 carry. There weren't any mid laners at the time that I looked at it. Let me see. I'm not going to go through all of them again. There's a lot of junglers. There's a lot of top laners. So the bottom line is 80 carries still win a lot of games. I'll guarantee you if there's 2 80 carries in a game that you play, one on each team, one of them is going to win the game. I can guarantee you that right now 100% that one of them is going to win the game. So, you know, 80 carries are... they can still be very good, even though people are complaining so much. I'm going to talk about why they're complaining, like I said at the end, and the Ziggs AD carry that people are trying out and what I think about it and all that kind of stuff. But they're just frustrated because they aren't as powerful as they used to be, but they're still very, very good, I think. I mean, I think that Vayne and Twitch have been 2 of the most oppressive champions in the preseason. They are extremely powerful. They're still very powerful, and they've sustained multiple nerfs. So they're very, very good still. But the psychology, everyone's thinking this now. There's lots of streamers that are talking about it, and a lot of people just haven't analyzed it that closely. So psychology does play into it. So just a quick recap. Elements that influence the meta, and there's other things too, but these are the big ones. Items, mastery, synergy, counters, game flow, and psychology. So regardless of the meta, just look at these things. Think about the game flow, think about the psychology, think about counters, synergy, masteries, and items. And you can analyze and find ways to succeed in different metagames. And I'm going to make videos about it, but I want to try to teach you how to think about it as well. So I don't just tell you what's good, I teach you how to think about what's good. And maybe you'll come up with some really cool stuff that no one's thought of before. Okay, so what about the current meta? What's going on in the current meta? Like, why is it the way that it is? What are the contributing factors? Okay, so the first one that I think is probably the biggest one is the removal of flat penetration. This and the jungle one are the 2 biggest ones. So the removal of flat penetration, now called lethality, which is garbage. It's a really bad stat. It doesn't start coming online. Like, here's the problem with lethality. It scales over time. So you get flat penetration later in the game. Once you start getting to level 12 or so, you start getting, you know, about what you used to get with flat penetration. But the problem with that is the reason people got flat penetration in the first place, near the end of Season 6, was so that you had more power early. So you were sacrificing a crit build, which scales much better later into the game, in order to have more early game power to snowball the game earlier. So the penetration was better early, but it fell off later and lost to crit. So if you didn't win the game and you built a penetration build, a flat pen build on like Jen or something, and the game got to 30 minutes and you're against a Caitlyn who built something like IE, Hurricane, Last Whisper or something like that, then she's going to outscale you. Now, I don't know why they changed it. I think a lot of it was because they were introducing new assassins, and they were afraid that champions like, Talon and some of these other reworked assassins would be too strong early on with flat penetration. But the effect of this was it really just massacred Lucian and MF and a lot of early game aggressive ADCs. Because Lucian doesn't scale nearly as well with a crit build or MF. Like, he has ability-based AD carries. So one thing you need to understand is there are auto-attack-based AD carries if you've never thought of this. So champions that have a lot of benefit to just right-clicking and landing your auto-attacks, they get some kind of perk out of that, right? So Caitlyn gets extra headshots. Twitch stacks poison. Those are probably the two best ones to think about in terms of getting a benefit out of auto-attacks. Whereas Lucian does not. He can sit there, if he just sits there and right-clicks a Caitlyn, and Caitlyn right-clicks him, and no one casts any abilities, Caitlyn's probably going to win. The same thing with MF. She doesn't have a lot of extra stuff that she gets from auto-attacking. But they have abilities. So Lucian can dash in, get his double shots, use a Q, get double shots. He's balanced around using his abilities. And his abilities have good, flat damage that doesn't scale that well into the game. It's okay, but it doesn't scale nearly as hard with AD as some other champions. And so, when you have penetration, then that helps amplify his high base damages. So that makes him powerful early in the game. Jin's the same way. Jin's not designed to sit there and just auto-attack people. He's designed to burst people by using his abilities in conjunction with, his fourth auto-attack. So this really hammered Lucian and MF. So any champions that wanted to bully people out and have a lot of power early on in the game really got squeezed out of the meta because flat penetration. Well, what was this effect? It made Twitch and Vayne a lot stronger. They were weaker because if you played this champion, if you played Twitch and Lucian, and he got an early Ghost Blade and dashed into you, the old Ghost Blade, not the new one, which is garbage, I think, on a lot of champions, then he could kill you. So you would never get a chance to get to those 3 items as Twitch or Vayne because you would lose the game beforehand. But now, since they can't press you early because they don't have flat penetration, then you get to those 3 items and take over the game. So that's part of why Twitch and Vayne are so powerful right now, is because Lucian, MF, and Jin fell off a lot in the preseason because of this nerf to flat penetration. So you can see how these effects create a cascade. Like, it has multiple ripples down the entire metagame. Like, if one champion becomes weaker that was holding other champions in place, so Lucian was holding Twitch down so he wasn't overpowered, now that Lucian is basically non-existent, then Twitch is taking over. So it's really hard to balance that. I mean, I understand why Riot did it. Like I said, they didn't want the assassins to be too strong, and they wanted to see how the assassins played out first in the preseason. To be fair, it is really hard to balance the 150 champions or whatever there are in League of Legends right now, because you just have all these ripple effects. And they want to keep it fresh and interesting too. Like, they want people to not just play Jhin every single game. They wanted to open up possibilities for other champions. So I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying, like, it is what it is here, and you need to figure out, learn these things so that you can adjust and pick better champions. And, just approach the game in a better way to get more elo. That's what this is all about, right? Is gaining a lot more rank, having a lot more fun with it, really understanding your decisions and feeling empowered, feeling like you're making good choices and not just playing random things that guides tell you to, play, right? So you can think for yourself, in other words, and really feel proud of that. Okay, so because the penetration got completely gutted, crit is basically the only viable build on most AD carries. You have to go some attack speed item, usually either Hurricane or Static Shiv, into Infinity Edge, and then often, it depends. I think people should very, very often get something like a QSS third item in solo queue, but most people will get like armor penetration or an additional crit item. So tanks become weaker later in the game because everyone builds these crit items. Tanks were great against things like Lucian MF, because the flat penetration just really didn't affect them in the mid and late game. But now that everyone's building crit, then tanks get a little bit weaker. And so because tanks are a little bit weaker, so people aren't picking those mega tanks like Nautilus top lane, although I think they should be picking a lot more, and Maokai and solo queue, that means that fighters like Riven are getting much, much stronger. Because the tanks are usually what would beat something like a Riven, and now they just aren't up there as much. Darius is probably one of the exceptions. People still play Darius all at top, but these are some of the effects of only being able to build crit builds. Also, and this is where I'll talk about why people are frustrated with ADC now. A big drawback of this is crit builds cost a lot more gold to build, and so that means you're not going to get your IE plus your Infinity Edge plus your Static Shiv or whatever if you're Vayne until like 22 minutes or something, most likely. I don't know the exact timing, but it takes a long time to get that. And then a lot of AD carries just feel like they have no power in the mid game, and that makes fighters and assassins even more strong because AD carries really can't fight them back until they get a couple of items. Most AD carries can't until they get a couple of items. So that can be very frustrating. So that's part of it, is that people can only build crit, and so AD carries, in general, it takes them a lot longer to come online. They are more powerful when they come online with the crit, but it takes a lot longer unless they get a lot of kills early on, which is hard to do because they don't have the power. Okay, what else is influencing the current meta? How are we looking on time here? We're doing okay. I usually like for my guides to be about 30 minutes to an hour long as much as possible, just to give you nice, good, thorough content, but at the same time, not take too terribly long. Okay, so other things. So I kind of lump these into one thing. I feel like they're just kind of one common phenomenon. This is just like outside of lane type of stuff that is affecting the lanes. Okay, so jungle experience, the introduction of the plants, very long camp spawn times in the jungle, and vision. The vision changes. Okay, so what all has this changed? All right, so early jungle experience is extremely high. Now, they have nerfed it a little bit, and they're going to nerf it in 7.1 even more, and I think they'll probably nerf it again after that. But junglers are just too powerful right now. Just straight up, they're too powerful. A bunch of them can take Dragon at level 4. They had it to where a jungler could show up in your lane when you're level 1 and he's level 2. Or was it level 3? I can't even remember. It was ridiculous. They would show up and they're multiple levels ahead of the bot lane in particular. And it was just really, really hard to fight them. And there were lots of junglers that could exploit that heavily, like Lee Sin most notably, but there were other junglers that could do that too. So early game ganking is extremely powerful, and that makes it a lot more dangerous earlier in the game. So it makes it really hard to play things like Twitch or Draven or Jhin or like these champions that don't have very good escapes, because Lee Sin can be showing up to your lane instead of the 3-minute top lane, which used to be like a standard gank a season or two ago. Now they show up in your lane at like 2 minutes. Level 3, or they did. And so, that makes it really difficult to play unsafe champions, the champions that don't have good escapes. The plants also make vision a lot more difficult to manage for a variety of reasons. So, number one, you have the dust plants. That gives the jungler an extra huge sweep radius. If they hit those dust plants, they can go in and clear out your wards, and they're going to have a sweeper anyways, and most good junglers will have a pink. So it makes it almost impossible to keep good vision down against a really smart jungler. And once again, that compounds the problem. Now they're getting much stronger in the jungle. They have the ability to gank you much earlier, and now you can't even see them when they're coming in. Riot also, I think it was in Season 6, I don't remember, they lowered the ward time from 3 minutes to 2.5 minutes. So all of this has been adding up over time to make the junglers extremely strong. So the dust plants clear the wards. The red plants actually open up new gank paths for a lot of junglers. So this is part of the reason why Hecarim has also risen to prominence. Because one of his problems is he didn't have really creative ways to gank. Like, he could run up the lane, but that's about it. Otherwise, he has to run over wards a lot of times. But now you have these red plants. Here, I'll just pull up a map really quickly. Okay, it's kind of an old school map, but whatever. Just look at it this way. Oh, I could have done view image. Let's do it that way. Okay. God, God, it's a pretty garbage map, but whatever. We'll work with it. So basically, they put a red plant here, and they put a red plant here. And especially if you're on the bottom side, working your way up, you know, if they come, like, jump off this red plant into this bush, it makes it very, very hard to ward, especially when they can take dragon at level 4, which is something I think I mentioned before, but if I didn't, that's another threat. So now, and level 4 is before you can even get a sight zone, because you're probably going to be level 3 or 4 by the time that some of these junglers can take the dragon. So now you have to choose. Well, you've got one ward that you can put up at a time, your little 1-minute ward. So you can put it on dragon, but if you put it on dragon, then you're not going to see them if they jump over this wall and come at you. Or you can put it here, and if you put it here, then they're going to get dragon. And they could also run and loop around this way and come get you. So you can't put it here and here. Like, it's just so many places you need to ward. But this red plant adds in an extra little thing where they could just jump right past your ward that was on the dragon and come and gank you bot lane. Where there were some junglers that could do that, like Lee Sin could hop over this wall and do it that way. But now, you know, there are a lot. But then if he did that, though, he would have to wait, right? Like, he would jump in this bush and you have to wait an extra 10 seconds or something. But Hecarim can jump over this now and just run straight in at you. Or Lee can jump over it and save his little dash and save his ward. Or Vi can come over it. So it just makes it a lot easier to gank. Or people can come if you're like right here and you're trying to ward here. And your mid laner warded right here. And they could take this red over the dragon pit and come and get you this way. So it just makes it a lot harder to manage wards in different places around the map now because of those plants. And the health plant lets the jungler gank more because they stay healthy, right? So they can just, usually a jungler would have to back if they're, you know, they just did like a full clear from blue all the way down to red or whatever. They might be really hurt, they'd have to back. Now they can just run up and hit some of these plants, heal, and then gank you without having to slow down. So it's just really accelerated the rate at which junglers can gank, and it's allowed them much more creative ways to gank. Also, the camp spawn times are really long, so there's really nothing they can, after they do a full clear, they don't have a lot to do other than gank. So, you know, now they just are constantly running around trying to gank because that's the only efficient way they can play the game. They can't just sit there and power farm anymore, or at least that's really inefficient compared to ganking, which is cool. I don't want junglers to sit there and power farm, but it just makes these early aggression junglers a bit too strong, in my opinion. And Riot knows that. They're dialing it back a little bit in 7.1. We'll see if it's enough. But that's been something that's been a big deal. Also, the vision changes. So the control wards have made it a lot more difficult to clear wards, especially in the tri-bush area. Let me just get a better map here. That map is absolutely garbage. That's not much better. That's a little bit better. Just like view image and separate. Okay, let's just do it this way. Maybe, there we go. Okay, this is a decent image, there we go. Okay, so control wards, the big thing is they block out your normal vision. So a problem is it's really hard in particular to control this tri-bush in bot lane, because you might see both laners right here and you might come over here and ward in this bush, but then to clear, to get those 4 hits on the ward, you can't see either one of these directions. So the jungler could just come running up through here or through here, and you won't see them until they're right on top of you, which is really annoying. Or if there's a control ward just in any of these bushes and you're trying to clear it, it's very, very dangerous. And so that just compounds the trouble with keeping good vision up, because the jungler could come over and kill you. So they're already powerful. It's hard to see them. They have all kinds of creative new paths. It's just made it really, really difficult to prevent the jungler from taking over the game a lot of the times. Okay, this brings us to our next point. So it's really hard to contain the jungler because they're so powerful now. You can't do it with vision nearly as easily. They're going to be higher level than you. They're going to have more powerful items. They're going to have all kinds of very creative gank paths. And now, on top of that, we have dragons are easier to kill, towers are very easy to take, and they give really big rewards. So they've buffed dragons up quite a lot, so people want to take dragons. They're very powerful. Like I said, there are some junglers that can do it basically solo. Towers fall a lot faster. They took away, I don't remember exactly. I'd have to go back and look at the patch notes, but I'm pretty sure they took away the bonus armor that towers got early on in various lanes. They did something to make pros stop doing the 2v1 lanes. But either way, first tower blood, very important. And just think about... do the view image again here. Just think about this reasonably, right? So first tower now gives you 400 extra gold. Dragons are much more powerful. Junglers are super powerful. So where would you want to go if you wanted the maximum advantage in the current meta? On top of 80 carries being much weaker, because remember, they don't have early penetration. That means you go bot lane, right? Because the 80 carry is not going to be able to fight you back that well. It's really hard to control vision. I mean, one reason why people didn't go bot lane nearly as much, junglers used to always go top, is because it was so hard to gank bottom because there was so much good vision. But now it's really, really hard to keep the vision for the reasons I described, and so it's much easier to get ganks off on bottom. So if you get a successful gank bottom as a jungler, then you're probably going to get 2 kills, and then you're either going to get a dragon or a tower out of it. So it's much, much more beneficial to gank bottom than it is to gank top. If you gank top, you might get 1 kill if you get the person. A lot of times people can get away top lane. They'll play kind of safer champions. Not always, but sometimes. But even in a rosy scenario, you gank top lane, you get a kill. What are you going to do? You're going to go get the Rift Herald? That thing takes forever to kill, and the buff is just frankly not that good most of the time. So if you go top, you get a kill. Yay, I got a kill. Well, the other jungler sees you top lane and says, I'm going to go bottom. They go bottom. They get 2 kills plus a tower or a dragon. That's so common. It's like every game, almost literally every game, comes down to which team sits on bottom more. Like which team has their mid laner go bottom and sit on it. Which team has the jungler go bottom and sit on it. Like that's just how you win games. You sit on bottom. And so that's one really frustrating thing in this meta is it's not about who's better at laning a lot of the time. Like who has better trades, who hits more CS. It's just strictly which team sits on bottom lane. Now there's obviously a little bit more to it than that, but not much. In the current meta, it's like, does your jungler come down and sit on the lane for you, or does their jungler come down? That's a huge, huge part of most games. And I think that's a lot of frustration with pros, with high challenger players, and just all kinds of other people, is that you feel out of control. Like there's not a lot you can do about it because you can't fight back early lane. A lot of times. There are some supports, Malzahar in particular, that I've been playing a lot, who can fight back, and he can kill people. So even if it's 2v3, even if the jungler shows up, depending on the jungler and what's going on, you can beat them. 2v3 with Malzahar. That's one reason why I really, really like Malzahar right now. And there's a lot of pros who are picking up on that. And he's probably going to get nerfed too. I really hope not. He's a lot of fun, but... Anyways, so all of these 3 combine to why there's always a party bottom lane. Courage of the Colossus is another offender, really strong in the early game. So that its intention, I think, was to give tanks a little bit more power to offset the assassins, right? But the consequence is that they made champions tanky that should not be tanky. So if you have a Vi that's building all AD, she shouldn't be allowed to go in, ult somebody, get like a 800 health shield off of Courage of the Colossus and her passive shield and get away with it. And that's the same thing with Hecarim. Hecarim does actually build kind of tanky, but he can go Trinity first and not get completely evaporated in some fights because he gets that extra shield when he charges in on people. So that's a problem with a lot of Courage Colossus users, is it's being abused in ways that champions that aren't tanky all of a sudden become tanky with Courage. And then finally, but they've nerfed Courage. I think it's in an okay spot right now. It's not nearly as strong as it used to be, but it's still a good one. Locket and Redemption. So this gives a lot of free tankiness to champions that should not be tanky, once again, so people can build, their all damage, Riven, Master Yi, Lee Sin, all this stuff. You can just go max damage, and if the support has Locket plus Redemption, they can lock it, give you the shield, Redemption. That shield will save you long enough for the Redemption to hit, and boom, it's like you have a bonus, 1,000 health or something, or more than that. So you get to be very tanky without having to be tanky at all. So that's a lot of what's determining this meta. So what are the best strategies then in this meta? I'm not going to go into like super detail. I already hit on like when I described this, kind of you could see what the best strategy is basically park it bottom lane with a hard engage champion that you build full damage that somehow gets tanky magically. You know, it's like Vi or Hecarim or Lee a lot of times. So that's kind of the winning strategy. But what can you do? So number one, be prepared for the party bot lane. People are still surprised. I still get annoyed. I still get surprised when I play. But really, you shouldn't. Like, that's going to happen. That's it. Like, that's going to happen in this meta. People are going to camp you bot lane mercilessly every single game. So you need to play champions that can handle that. You need to play... If you can't... you need to play champions that can handle it from your end, that can actually convert and get kills. And, like, if your jungler comes bottom, or you need to play it from the defensive end. Can you actually survive if 4 people come bottom? There are champions that can do this. So champions that could do that pretty well. Nautilus, he's very tanky. He has a lot of CC. He's very hard to tower dive. Yet he can tower dive if you're the aggressive team. If you're the one that has the jungler and the mid laner and the top laner, they're all sitting bottom. So Nautilus is very good. Jan is very good for the same reason. She can peel people and keep people up. If they're trying to dive you, Malzahar is very good for this because he just has extreme damage early on. If they try to attack you, and they can't. Like, they cannot attack you through those minions. They're going to die. Like, those minions do so much damage, levels 1 to 6, and even later in the game, but especially levels 1 to 6, they just cannot fight you. They will die if they try to fight you. So, because I've added up these minions before. I don't remember if I still have this up here. Yeah, I do. I'm going to make a special Malzahar guide. I'm going to see what they do in 7.1, and I'm still trying out some different builds. He's very hard to figure out how to build correctly. But let's just put it this way. Level 5, you cast 2 minions. They hit somebody, then all of a sudden it's 4 minions. Those 2 new minions hit somebody, and all of a sudden it's 6 minions, and they hit somebody. So just 3 hits, just auto, auto, auto. That's like 3 seconds of fighting. It's 720 damage. 720 damage. That's more than most people's level 3 ult at level 16. So it's an extreme amount of damage. An extreme amount of damage. So I'm going to make a whole video about Malzahar. I have a lot of it on my channel if you want to see it before I do the guide. But just trust me, Malzahar is very, very good at the Fiesta bottom lane. If they want to party, he's ready. He's got the Cerveza. He's got his sombrero. He's not going to be the Pinata, probably. So just play champions that can fight and skirmish early. I recommend those 3. Who else would be good? Tom Kent should probably be pretty good with it. Champions I would not recommend are things that are not going to be that safe. Like Leona, if you go into engage, you're going to get camped. You're going to die. Zyra, very similar. You can pressure up, but Zyra pushes because of her plants, and it's really hard for her to escape. And if they get a drop on you, you're going to die. So that's why I've favored Malzahar more than Zyra, because at least Malzahar can fight back a lot of different people early on. Zyra kind of can, but she has much longer cooldowns, and her plants can't move. Like, the minions can chase people. The plants can't really chase people, so if they just reposition around the plants, you're kind of a sitting duck early on. Those are the 3 I'd recommend. There are other good ones, too. I mean, Braum can be pretty good. Thresh can be good. Zillion can be pretty good if you land those double bombs. So there's other options, but I think that Nautilus, Janna, and Malzahar are 3 of the best rodeo, clown fiesta type of champions bottom lane. You want to ward often and be very careful. So you need to use a lot of wards, but just be careful out there. Because the jungler is very, very strong, and they will run you down, and it's hard to keep your wards up because they're constantly sweeping them with their sweeper, their dust, and their pinks. So just keep that in mind. So if you're on this side, you're getting pushed in a tower, you know, walk over here, ward over this wall right here, ward over here, right here. Don't go walking through here. Walking through the river is much, you know, if you're pushed into lane, it's very, very dangerous. Or if you're on this side, just try to ward here and maybe like just here. Don't try to go deep into their base and ward unless you have better positioning. So just be very, very aware of your surroundings because junglers are going to be exceptionally strong. Okay. Know when to give up a tower. So if there's 4 people and there's just 2 of you down there and there's a really high probability that they're going to be able to kill you, just leave. Just deal with it. Just say, you know what? It's gone. Don't be one of those people that stays around in a 4v2 situation under tower and then they kill both of you and the tower, and then they get the dragon, and then you complain, well, the tower domed me. What was I supposed to do about it? Leave. Give up the tower. Like, sometimes that's all you can do. Just don't give them extra stuff. They're going to get the tower anyways if it's 4v2 and your team is not coming down there. There's just not a lot you can do about it. You're just going to have to suck it up, lose the tower, and just do what you can. Communicate opportunities with the jungler. So the jungler is just way too powerful right now, honestly. Like, they're changing it. They are going to change it at 7.1. But help them out. Just let them know, okay, bot lane doesn't have flash or exhaust, or hey, their jungler's about to dive us here. I see him setting up in this bush. That type of stuff. Now, don't be too domineering. Don't say, get down here now, or I'm going to AFK type of thing. Or, what are you doing, you idiot? Why are you camping top lane? There's 4 of them bot 3 times now. That type of thing, you know. You've got to be delicate about it, but try to just let them know, like, okay, there's no flashes bottom. I think we can get a kill. I've got this CC. I've got my exhaust. We're ready to go. Like, just try to tempt them and say, I think we've got some free kills bottom, and ping some stuff, you know. Let them know the flash is gone. Let them know your Malzahar with ult or your Nautilus with ult. It's real easy to catch people and kill them with those ultimates. So just, you know, try to get them to do the right thing, which is camp bottom lane in the current meta as much as you can. Play champions that are good against fighters in the mid lane. So play champions that are really good against things like Akali, Riven, Kha'Zix, Rengar. There's all kinds of super high damage champions that are close range. That's what's really popular right now. So hard CC, peel, and tank. So Nautilus, Malzahar is very good. He's not necessarily super tanky, although you can build him tanky and he can be useful. And Janna, because she has a lot of peel. Play champions that can roam and make plays. Malzahar and Nautilus. Because then you can kind of equalize it, right? So, you know, if they roam bottom a lot and you repel them, then you can roam mid and make a play with your jungler. So if your jungler wants to camp mid instead of bottom, you can roam up there and help them out. So just being able to move around and make plays is really important. How are we looking on time here? Okay, good. And I'm going to come up with a full tier list video when 7.1 comes out too. So I've got a Malzahar video coming soon and a full tier list video. And I'm going to try to do even more guides. I'll see if I can do one like at least once a week. If not, maybe a couple per week. We'll see. It takes a little while to do the research and write all this out and shoot this. You know, it takes a few hours usually, but I think it's definitely worth it. People get a lot out of it. People seem to enjoy it. So, and I love teaching it. Okay. So what about this new AD carry meta then? So as I've just described, ADs are very underpowered in some circumstances early on into the game. So is it worth it to play a mage bottom instead? So several streamers have showcased the AP ADC. And people will call it different things, but basically putting a mage bottom lane. So the most popular one is Ziggs. So instead of running an AD carry, you just run Ziggs. So is this good? So why would people possibly do this? Well, they will usually describe something like what I described above. There is not really an early game option for a lot of AD carries. Everyone camps bottom for the reasons I described, and you can just feel kind of helpless, like you're just getting destroyed early game, and that can be frustrating for a lot of people. So what does Ziggs offer? Okay, well, Ziggs, so AD carries are on the weak side, which is what you know, I just described early in the game, especially combined with the jungler power and the massive pressure. So the crit build is also the only option, which I described in most cases, and it costs just too much gold. You're not going to come online until 20-25 minutes in the game. So what does Ziggs do? So Ziggs clears tower very quickly. I'll go ahead and pull him up here if you're not familiar with how this works. We'll pull him up. Okay, so why Ziggs? Alright, so he does... his basic attacks periodically deal an extra amount of damage, so every 12 seconds. Every time he throws a bomb or something, the cooldown goes down by a lot. But, and this is based on his level. So at level, I don't know, whatever. Let's just say it does 100 damage. So it does his basic attack damage, and then it does the extra 100, and then it does whatever this AP is. So at level 13, you know, his ratio, well, we'll just say level 7. His ratio is 40%. So let's say he has at level 7, 100 AP. Let's say he completed a lot of pieces of his Morello, and he had from his runes and masteries and stuff like that. Let's just say he has 100 AP. So that would deal 140 plus 48. So that's what, 100, 188. So we'll just call it around 200 damage. Extra magic damage, and it's doubled against structures. So that's 400 magic damage that his short fuse does to a tower at level 7. That's a huge, huge chunk out of a tower. In addition to your normal attack. Your normal attack, you know, probably does an extra 50. So you're talking like 450 damage to a tower in one auto attack. Now, yes, it only comes up every 12 seconds, but if you're sitting there pushing them to tower and just using your short fuse to hit the tower, it's going to do a lot of damage. His bombs are pretty cheap. I mean, it costs 70 at max rank and does 255 damage with a 65% ratio. It's okay. It's got some good clear. Satchel charge. This is another tower taking. So if you throw the satchel charge on the tower, you just straight up kill it if it has a certain percentage health. So if it has a 0.25% health left, you throw the W on it, and it even gives you a little indicator, so you don't even have to do any guesswork. You throw it on it, press W, boom, dead. So you can short fuse it. Later in the game, Ziggs can almost two-shot towers. You can short fuse it, hit it. That'll deal, 70% of the damage to it. You have your W maxed out, demolish it, boom, gone. So he takes towers extremely fast, like much faster than most AD carries. So that's one reason why people play AD carries is for tower taking. So he's really good at that. He has a pretty short cooldown ultimate that just does a ton of damage. And it does 50% extra damage against people that are in the middle. So if I play Malzahar support, for example, at level 6, and he drops his bomb on somebody, it's going to do 300 damage. So my Malzahar minions, like my level 3 minions that I talked about before, are going to get those 3 hits in if they're stunned for 2.5 seconds. So that's 720 damage. Plus his is 300 damage from his Mega Inferno Bomb alone. So that's 1,000 damage. Plus just Malzahar's damage that he does with his ult. In addition to hitting them with a Q and an auto attack, they're dead. They're dead. Like, they're not going to live through it. So his ultimate combines very, very well with other CC out there. So he's good. He's fun. I've had him on my team a couple of times. So that's why people are playing him, though, is he takes towers very quickly. He has a lot of burst damage, and he has pretty good scaling later on into the game with his Inferno Bomb. It's, about 75% scaling. So he can be pretty good. So he clears towers quickly, clears waves quickly with his little minefield and his Q. His base damages are much higher earlier in the game. As I said, think about that 300 plus the Q, like 600 burst damage in a second and a half. Like, what AD carry is going to do 600 damage at level 6 burst on someone who's stunned? Not many that I can think of. So that's the difference there. So what's the advantage? So he gives your team more power early. So you can kind of fiesta with him. You do a lot of damage. If they try to dive you, you can Inferno Bomb them, knock yourself away, all that kind of stuff. So you have a lot of options that a lot of AD carries don't have. What's the disadvantage? Well, it's really hard to take Baron because Baron has some magic resistances and you don't have really strong auto attacks and you don't have crit. So it makes it really, really hard to take Baron unless you have other ADs on your team. So if you have something like a Fiora, a Kled, Master Yi, things like that do a lot of auto attack damage, then you can still take, Dragon fairly well. Or if you have like a Cassiopeia or a Rise or something mid or top, you can still take Barons, but it's going to be a lot weaker because you don't have the AD carry. So that's kind of a drawback, is you can't really do Baron that easily with Ziggs. And you don't have to a lot of times because of his tower clear, but that's just something to be aware of. Also, the skill shots can be kind of difficult to land. So you can actually throw the bombs over people, and this is not uncommon. So you want to throw it just a little bit ahead of them and have it bounce into them. Or throw it onto a creep that they're next to, and then it blows up and hits them too. So it can be hard to hit these. It can be really hard to use a satchel charge. You can knock people away with it. There's a lot of cool things you can do with it. Like if a Lee is trying to jump into you with a Q, you can knock him away with the satchel charge, or you can knock yourself away with the satchel charge. So it's pretty cool. It's cool. Like, he's a fun champ, but it requires a lot, and you have to. This is a skill shot too, so he's a fun champ, but you do have to hit a lot of skill shots, more so than most AD carries. So that's just something else that's on the board there. Also, he's not that great at tanks. Like, he does have cooldowns. His damage is not that high compared to other AP carries later in the game. It's okay, but compared to something like Ryze or Cassiopeia, he's just not going to have the same kind of tank breaking power. Like, this is not really going to cut through tanks. This will do a decent chunk to him, but, you know, these two are basically utility spells that don't do a ton of damage usually, and this is kind of one of your only damage sources, so he's going to have a problem with tanks if they come back into the meta. So what's the ultimate verdict? He's interesting. He's interesting. I think if you have, like I said, sustained 80 damage somewhere else. So this is another good option. So if you have, and this is a common occurrence too, if you have an 80 top, an 80 mid, and an 80 jungler, then having AP as Ziggs can be a very good option. So if you have something like a Yasuo middle, a Riven top, and a Lee Sin in the jungle, then Ziggs can actually be quite a good choice because you need AP on your team. And it's not uncommon to have at least two other 80 threats. So to have something like a Lee Sin and a Yasuo top. So that is a better way of balancing your team. If you have like a Cassiopeia mid and you can go Ziggs bottom, that helps out. So he can be good in the right situation. But I ultimately think that a good Caitlyn, Twitch, or Ezreal is just going to be better than Ziggs. They just scale better later into the game, and they're pretty good at the Fiesta early on, especially Ezreal and Kate. Ezreal hits his power spike, not like a spike, but he gets to where he can do some decent burst damage earlier in the game, because a lot of Ezreals are building Trinity Force now, and that's a one-item power spike. So if he gets Trinity, he can do quite a bit of damage earlier in the game. So you only need, you know, roughly 3,500 gold to get the Trinity versus, you know, whatever it costs to get Static Shiv plus Infinity Edge. It's like over 6,000. So he hits his power spike a little bit earlier with Trinity, and he has really good poke damage later. So he still scales pretty well. He has a problem with tanks too, but I don't know. I've had games where I've won, where I had a Ziggs on my team, and I've had games where I've lost. So it's okay. I don't think it's imbalanced. I don't think it's spectacularly better than a good Caitlyn or Ezreal, but it's okay. It's just a different way to play. It's better earlier. It's better like under 25 minutes, but you know, the Caitlyn's going to be better over 25 minutes. So if you think you can close out the game that fast, it could be an option, but okay. And I just want to end here just thinking about new metagame predictions. So what do I think is going to get nerfed? What's going to get buffed now? And how's this going to affect the metagame to some extent? Okay, they're going to nerf Ziggs, probably, just because people are going to cry so much that he's squeezing out all of the 80 carries bottom lane. Even though for the reasons I described, I don't think that he will. I think that, I'm not sure if he'll be played competitively or not. He might be. If he gets played competitively, he'll almost certainly be nerfed, because a lot of people just really like the 80 carry role. Or I mean, that's a huge portion of the population, and they don't want to feel like they have to play mages. So I think there might be such an uproar that they have to nerf him. Jungle's definitely getting nerfed. It's already getting nerfed. Oh, oops. I meant to put that up here on the Ziggs. There we go. So when they nerf Ziggs, I think they'll probably nerf his tower execution. Like they'll probably start with knocking off the double damage to structures here. That just seems excessive. They might lower the ratios. And if they need to give him another nerf, then they might take away his ability to demolish towers with it. So we'll see. I think they'll start, if they nerf him, I think they'll start with knocking off the double, maybe lowering the ratio in half. So like 15 to 25% AP. They'll do something like that with his passive. And then if they need something else, then they'll probably take off his demolish. Just to make him to where he takes towers about as fast as other 80 carries, but not like exceptionally faster like he does right now. Jungle's going to get nerfed. They're already nerfing the experience. I think they'll probably nerf it a little bit more. They just need to make the junglers like not be exceptionally more powerful than bot laners early in the game. Like if they want to give them better scaling later in the game, like maybe more experience over time with the jungle buffs, I don't know, something. But you just can't have junglers rolling up for all the reasons I described, being like super powerful early on. Okay. They're going to nerf Redemption. So I mean, none of this is like in the 7.1 notes. I don't think the jungle nerf is in 7.1, but they will nerf Redemption eventually. Like, it doesn't need to do damage. It needs to have less range, and you shouldn't be able to cast it after you die. Like, all of that is just excessive power. It's already a really good item. If they nerf Redemption, that will make a lot of these fighters a little bit weaker, and that'll bring tanks back in because the people won't have the free tankiness anymore. I don't think they'll nerf Locket. They might. Locket's really strong, but it's not abused nearly as much as Redemption is. Okay, Lethality is going to get some kind of buff for ranged champions, so they should make it where melee champions have less scaling with it, but ranged champions get more. Because I think it's good to have early game options for AD carry, you know, just have people that can, you know, make Lucian viable, make MF viable, but then also have Caitlyn and Jen and all these other people viable. I think that the meta in Season 6 was pretty good in terms of AD carries. There's been a lot of champions that were very viable, especially kind of in the mid to the end of the season. Lower cost for crit items. So this would be something that would help crit-based champions feel more powerful early on. So I don't know what they would do exactly with that, with like Infinity Edge. Like, make the AD items all cost somewhere around like 3,200 gold, and then if you have to, nerf the stats a little bit on them. But just try to make it to where the AD carries can have a couple of items if they're doing well and farming appropriately, about like, you know, 20 minutes or something tops. Just so they can be relevant by 20 to 25 minutes instead of 25 to 30. Okay. So overall, I think Kate's going to rise in power. Especially if they boost the crit items, like I think they might do eventually. And if they nerf the jungle, because she's just really strong early game, she can bully people out. Especially if she gets left alone, if they don't camp her, and she scales really well into the late game, and there's just not... She's just one of the best crit users out there. Especially if they nerf Vayne and Twitch. I think they're going to nerf Vayne and Twitch one more for solo queue. I'm not sure. Maybe they won't, but those two are still just ridiculous. Like, if they get those two items, if they get the Hurricane IE, it's on. It's just really hard to stop them. Even with just IE. Like, if Vayne or Twitch gets IE, they are a terror. I think they'll probably nerf Caitlyn too. I just feel like she's too strong because the other AD carries are so weak. I think they'll nerf her traps. There's no reason why she should be allowed to have 5 traps out. Just give her 3 traps, make them cost actual mana, so that she has to strategically think about it. Or just make it like a huge cooldown, like a 10-second cooldown between each trap, so that she can't just drop 5 traps in a row. That's kind of a major problem with Caitlyn late game, is she can clog up an entire lane with traps. Like, you can walk up here to this tower, and I'm sure everyone knows what I'm talking about if you played against the Kate. She just drops 5 traps right here while she's sieging you. It's like, how do you engage on that? So either make them stick around for a lot less time, like maybe make the trap very tactical, where it only lasts for like, I don't know, 5 to 10 seconds instead of minutes at a time. Make her only be able to cast 1 every 10 seconds, so it takes longer to set up. Make her limit the amount she can drop, so maybe 3 maximum. Just something with her trap. It's just too powerful. She has too many of them. It activates very quickly. It gives her a huge spike in damage. It has CC. It combos very well with people in lane. There's just too much power behind those traps. So I think the rest of her kit's fine. It's just the traps are a little excessive. I think Malzahar pets are going to get a nerf, especially if pro players start using it, which I expect they might. Tanky engaged junglers are probably going to become even better. So Vi and Hecarim, they're probably going to get some kind of nerf. So because some of these other champions aren't going to get the free health anymore from Redemption, or at least I think they'll nerf Redemption eventually. Lee Sin's getting nerfed, so early pressure junglers likely are probably going to get nerfed. And if Lee gets nerfed, then Vi and Hecarim are probably going to start running rampant. I think Poke and Siege champions are going to become a little bit more popular, so Xerath, Ziggs, and Lux. Even though I think, like I said, they're going to nerf something about Ziggs, I think it'll be his tower-taking capabilities and not necessarily his poke damage. So I've already seen these start to become a lot more popular because people just aren't running lifesteal, they're just running the crit builds. And these champions can farm safely, and they can't get ganked very easily early on. So I think potentially they could be, you know, quite strong moving forward. We'll see. Especially because they're nerfing Syndra really hard in 7.1. She might be holding some of these champions back. So I think that Victor is going to become a lot more popular again. Maybe Cassiopeia. And then that opens up a lot of room for things like Ziggs and Xerath if Victor's not there anymore. And I think Ashe might become more popular. So if people start needing real engage again, if some of these other, if like Vayne and Twitch get nerfed and they help out crit items a little bit, like I think they might, then Ashe might become a little bit more popular. Especially if you need to engage on champions like Xerath, Ziggs, and Lux from a distance, that could be a good option. So, okay, that's going to be it for the video. I think it was about an hour, right? Yeah, an hour and 5 minutes. That's not too bad. So I hope I showed you a little bit how to think about metagames, like why the current metagame is the way that it is, which AD carries, or why the AP ADC has become popular, why it's good, why it's bad in some circumstances. You know, jury's out. I think it can be good, like I said, in some circumstances, but I don't think it's necessarily you should do it all the time. I still think that a good Kate, Twitch, or Ezreal can be better in different circumstances. And I will update this. I'll try to do this once, you know, every couple of patches or something, once if there's like major changes in different metas, and just kind of keep you up to date. But I hope this will help you think about ways that why metas are the way that they are. It's not just magical how people feel, or it's not like a popularity contest. Just some champions are better for these reasons on certain patches. So anyways, thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you next time.